Hello. So
Hi, Ransome.
it's a pleasure to meet you all. My name is Ransome, and thank you, Naomi, for this opportunity to discuss my research with my future colleagues. And it's going to be fun, I think. I know you all students from business intelligence systems and AI and business analytics programs. So normally you would be familiar with so many things I'm going to say. It's not going to be a scientific research kind of presentation, okay? It's going to be really interactive. Would focus on the concepts, and please do not hesitate at any point in time to ask questions or to intervene and make your own contributions about what you think about the subject, okay? All right, so I'm going to begin by sharing my slides. So let's start. There we go. Okay. Do you see the? Yeah. Do you see the slide?
Yep.
Okay. Excellent. So we're going to be discussing deriving business value from AI in B2C e-commerce firms, which is actually what I've been working on for the past 3 years. And essentially trying to see what firms could really benefit from in terms of AI. Like, what is AI all about today? I mean, everyone says AI, everyone uses the word AI. In information systems, it's been existing for a very long time. People call it decision support systems, intelligent decision support systems, expert systems, and all kinds of names. And today, almost everyone who makes a technology decides somehow to target AI. For some reason, I'm not sure. But once the person tags it AI, everyone tries to buy the technology, right? So it's good for business. So I actually try to look in the specific context of e-commerce, like, does it really have some value? And if it does have, how can firms leverage AI to actually derive this value? Okay, so I'm going to start by asking you anyone?
Getting computers to act like humans.
Getting computers to act like humans. Thanks. One more person. One more.
Well, feel free to put it in the chat.
Sorry. Improving maybe everyday tasks with these technology.
Improving everyday tasks with technology. So any technology that enables us improve our everyday task is AI. Okay, so how do you recognize AI then? So how do you tell that this technology is AI from the other? Because normally technology is by default meant to help us, right? To perform some task that we find difficult to perform to some extent, right? So how does it distinguish itself from other technologies?
Maybe work that could be mistaken for human work.
Work that may be mistaken for human work? I didn't hear, sorry. Can you repeat, please?
Oh yeah, sorry. Just work that might be mistaken. You might think would have been done by a human, but it's actually done by a machine.
Oh, okay. So some task. So if you observe a task that's been done by a machine, and you think it's been done by human, then that's probably an AI, right? Okay. And based on these definitions that you've provided, do you think such technologies really add some value to you as an individual? Is there any, because there's so many technologies sold as AI today, is there anyone around you that you think we could mistake for a human that actually brings value to you?
I think it really adds value, even if you think about facial recognition and so on, all those different technologies that we kind of depend quite a bit on artificial intelligence. So I would see a lot of business value.
Okay.
I think the ones where we don't even know that it's there, so chatbots, etc., that it's actually AI behind it, but we think we're chatting to Lorraine or whoever it is, or Ransome in Toulouse Business School, but it's not. It's just a piece of AI that's there in front of us this morning.
Nice example. I think I put my AI here to present for me. But yes, you're right. It's quite hard actually to really lay a finger on AI, because based on your different definitions, you see that there are different perspectives of AI. We understand AI differently, and based on our different understandings of AI, we apply and understand AI differently. Our expectations from AI are different, right? Because we're not really sure, we don't have a common understanding of AI. And this is actually what's put a lot of fear in the minds of individuals and of entrepreneurs, right? Because they're worried, like we're all developing what we think is AI, right? From our individual perspectives, and whatever we call AI is evolving so fast and in a very uncontrollable way, right? Because we're not sure where it's going. We're not sure what it can do, what it cannot do most of the time. And this is not a problem just for individuals, but it's a problem for many, many businesses as well. Many managers are really worried about AI. Some are really optimistic and they believe it's going to solve all their business problems, right? Some are really pessimistic. They think AI is not real at all. It's a myth, and probably it's essentially just automation. You just make people lose their jobs by automating tasks. And so AI is not good at all for mankind, right? So it's really hard to have a pragmatic view, a pragmatic understanding of AI if you've not really seen it in action. How many of us here have actually ever thought about what AI is before purchasing a device marketed as AI? In my case, for example, when I just started my research on AI, I was like, I see AI all the time on TV and I've never really used AI. And so one day I just saw the advert on Amazon Echo, right? And Amazon was advertising Amazon Echo as an AI. Okay, so I said, okay, I'm going to purchase my Amazon Echo and I would have the experience of AI before actually getting into the research. It's better to understand what it is about before I can think about contributing or adding some kind of value to understanding it. So I purchased the AI. Before I continue, is anyone using a smart speaker? No one? Okay. So I did purchase it because it was advertised as an AI. And I had my expectations, because when you watch the advert, you can go and have a quick look on YouTube. You're going to see the lady coming back from work who just speaks to Alexa, and Alexa is going to do some stuff online, and she speaks so naturally. you see, without stress, without struggling to learn the technology or anything. And so it's this real human computer interaction that we've always dreamed of, that can understand our language naturally and easily adapt to what we're trying to say, understand all the ontology, the semantics. And when I purchased my own smart speaker, and the very first day I speak to it, it doesn't understand what I'm saying. See, and I try different ways of talking to it. It barely understands what I'm saying. And the worst of all, when I try to use it to actually make a purchase on Amazon, it's really, really just switching from button to voice. It didn't seem smart at all, right? And so it made me to start questioning, like, what am I missing, right? Is it that I do not understand what AI is, or is it just AI that doesn't work yet, or it's just a device that just claims to do AI but doesn't actually do AI? So what is really this AI about? And this is what many organizations struggle with, many managers struggle with, because many of them now try to, like Walmart, Target, try to provide their shopping services, for example, through smart speakers, saying that it's an AI. Unfortunately, if I try to use the device like I did and it just didn't work, I do not see the added value. I'd rather just go to the website where I'm used to and everything seems to work well, right? So what's really the value that this brings to me as a consumer who wants to purchase online, for example? So there are so many different ways of looking at AI. You can look at it from as a field of study, which is essentially where all the different domains about understanding how machines can behave like humans, all the research goes on. You can look at it as a concept, right? Just a concept, some abstract term that characterizes machines that try to behave like humans, right? You can look at it as a system. So a series of components, like in information systems, we have essentially 4 different components, right? So we have the input, the processing, the output, and the feedback components, right? So we can look at AI as a system that has these different components. And we can also look at AI as an ability that's given, right, to existing technology. Okay, so when we look at the original definition of AI that was proposed by McCarthy back in the day, they were speaking mostly about machines that were capable of interacting using natural language, that could make sense from problems through abstraction, that could actually solve and take actions to solve problems, and that could learn just like humans do, right? And so in as much as AI definitions and understanding go in millions of directions, if we have to go back to basics sometimes, we need to look at what we really expect from AI, right? And this wasn't achievable back in the day. That's why it was mounted as a project, and which led to the series of technologies of decision support systems and expert systems that were back in the day. And what was preventing this AI from taking off? It's actually because back in the day, we didn't have as much computational power as we have today, for example, right? So I think I am the generation of diskettes, and my parents were probably the generation of punch cards and all the technologies that were used back in the day to try to store. I mean, back in the day, when you had your diskette of 3.1 megabytes, you were a hero, right? But today, that is not enough to store a music file, right? So this really helped for the evolution of AI, right? In terms of capacity, in terms of memory, in terms of processing speed. Today we have lots of technologies that help with that, right? We also didn't have as strong algorithms as we have today. Today, we have many different algorithms. Back in the day, again, I'm still a very younger generation, but we did BASIC, right? That's the name of the programming language. It was BASIC, we did BASIC, we did Pascal. But I'm sure in maybe in your time, Martin or Loen, you guys did the the machine learning itself, like the machine codes, the 1 and 0s, the binary codes. But I didn't see that. So, but today we have high level languages, right? We have like the Pythons that really help us to be able to develop programming algorithms much faster and easier. Okay, and so we have all this series of limitations that were back in the day that significantly overcome today, because cloud computing helps us to overcome things like processing speed and storage, right? The Internet of Things gives us access to a lot of data, right, through connections. We also have things like machine learning and deep learning, right, that are actually significantly contributing to the advancements of AI. So maybe today we do have the resources that can give us the ability to achieve AI as it was originally conceived, right? And this, I think, is what's making AI research and development so interesting and evolving so fast, because now we have tools to be able to implement it the way it was originally imagined. And so in my research, I try to categorize them as two types of AI, right? There's so many categorizations you would find online and different proposals people have made. But for me, I think there are two main categories we can see based on this description. We have what we can call the back-end AI and what we can call the front-end AI, right? So the back-end AI essentially is all the algorithms that do the manipulations behind the machine learning, the deep learning algorithms that actually help for automation, that actually help to gain insights, right? Business insights to support decision-making and all of that. So essentially, you can assimilate this to analytics, okay? All the AI algorithms that help for analytics. And then we have front-end AI. That's actually what we have like our smart devices today that actually put at the forefront human-computer interaction, right? So you have all the smart speakers, the smartphones, the smart watches, okay? And these two categories of AI are actually what can be leveraged to actually bring value to some extent to the entire chain of a business, okay? So why do you think, for example, you all have some device that is tagged AI, okay? So maybe your smartphone or your smartwatch. Why did you choose to use that device? Why did you purchase that device?
Well, I got the Fitbit to try and get healthier.
Okay, you got the Fitbit to try to get healthier. Is it helping?
Well, I suppose it kind of motivates me to get my steps in. Okay. 4 times a week. I don't do it every day. I take the watch off a couple of days because I think you could be tied to the watch otherwise. But yeah, I think it helps me. It was actually, some of my friends had one and they were just saying they do their 10,000 steps a day, and you know, it was good in that regard. So
okay. And do you think it is related to the Fitbit?
Sorry, Ransome, what you said, is it related?
The fact that it helps you get healthier? The fact that it helps you get healthier, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
To the AI.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it was good because I need lots of motivation to go out and walk. I'm not one of these people that gets up and throws on the gear and off you go. So it was good to kind of, it made me feel lazy, I'll put it to you like that, when I wasn't doing something.
And how does it help you as an AI? How is it different from my watch that just gives me statistics about how many steps I made in a day, that just rings a bell like it's 10 a.m. Ransome, go for your walk or your jog?
Yeah.
How is yours different?
I don't know. Like, I always think of my Fitbit as a piece of artificial intelligence, in that it can just, I mean, it can read a lot more than just exercise. But I think it's just that it's kind of like, sometimes it's like another person on your wrist, you know. And as I said, some days I take it off because I kind of find I'm kind of tied to the Fitbit. I'm always checking, you know, checking to see how I've slept, you know, how far I've walked, and so on. So, yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Does it have AI capability, Lorraine?
Huh?
Does it have AI capability, or is it just?
I thought it would have like had AI capability, because when I think of AI, again, it goes back to kind of understanding the whole term. Like, I think of GPS tracking, all that kind of stuff. And I think of that as artificial intelligence, but maybe I'm wrong.
Ransome will tell us in a minute.
No, that is the point of my research. You know, you're not wrong, but that's a question in the research. Like, I started by that. What is AI? Because, like you said, you just called the GPS, for example, AI. In your opinion, you're not wrong. Since I do not have an answer for you, I cannot say you're wrong. I do not have a factual, a scientific answer to say you're right or you're wrong. But as I go on, I would present what I think and what I categorize as AI, and all this discussion would help us to assess at the end of the day what is AI and what is not AI according to my findings, right, in society, and if that could bring value somehow.
What I find interesting is the difference between me and my kids. So I obviously have a smartphone. It's an Apple phone, so it has Siri, and I never use it, right? But of course, my kids, if they want to look up something on the internet or whatever, it's like, hey, Siri. And I'm like, you'd be quicker to type it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, I do use my smart speaker, and I'm trying not to yell Alexa because I don't want it to turn on, but but I do not use it as an AI anymore. I just use it as another interface, right? So instead of typing, I use my voice. That's just it. So I don't think it does anything smart. I just think it saves me the time from having to displace myself to go type or to sit in front of my computer to do something. At least I can just talk. But I just think voice interfaces have always existed. I mean, when I did my literature review, they've been there for a very long time. So that's, in my humble opinion, that's not what I call AI. It's just a voice interface, right? So we'll see as we go on. Please, the others, do not hesitate to jump in, okay? It's an interesting discussion for us to, and saying it out loud can actually help us to realize what we really think about AI, okay? If what we think is AI actually makes some kind of sense to us, okay? So please continue, okay? And do not hesitate to interrupt me at any time. So people adopt these technologies, like we said, for different reasons, right? So there are what we know about technology adoption in general, right? So many people adopt AI because, well, it could be perceived as useful, okay? It could be easy to use. It could be convenient to be able to stay in my living room and talk to, maybe we're having a debate about what AI is, and I just ask Alexa what AI is, right? Without having to pick up my laptop and type. So we may just enjoy the fact that we can now talk to a device, for example. Okay. It could be an issue of social status. So different people are using different AI devices, maybe like your smartwatch, right? So you feel like it's going to be important for your social status to also use a smartwatch. It could be social influence. So all your classmates actually use it's an AI device. So you feel like you're left out if you do not use an AI device. So you want to be able to say, yeah, I've used Siri too. Yeah, I've used Google Assistant as well, right? And there are some people who just use it out of technology optimism. So they're just very optimistic about AI. They just think AI would be able to help them do everything. I mean, it's just going to be another version of human intelligence, right? So that you have maybe in your pocket or something. And others is because of the services that the AI can render to them, right? And this is not unique to AI technology, to every technology that we have ever adopted, be it a phone, be it a computer or anything. It's not specific to AI, okay? And other people do adopt AI. I mean, for a little story, I did conduct a survey, right? An interview, a series of interviews with people, regular people on the street, just asking them what they think is AI and the reasons why they adopt these AI. Okay, whatever they called AI, of course, I didn't precise, and why they did adopt it. So in addition to the previous reasons, these are some social relationship perspectives, right, to why people do adopt AI. So it's because of the feeling of intimacy. So the fact that they would have a companion. There were some people who said to speak to the Alexa devices just because they're alone at home. And so they need some kind of companionship. They need some kind of friendship. And they feel it's loyal. So some of them even try to relate it to their dogs and their cats. Okay, so they feel like these devices give them that kind of feeling of friendship and intimacy. And they feel like it understands them, probably because it doesn't contest what they say. But well, they have a feeling anyway that it does understand them. And so they do like the fact that they have these devices with them. And it helps them to feel like they're involved in something, the fact that they do interact whenever, however they want with the device. They feel like they're building some kind of relationship, a social relationship with these devices, okay? However, once again, this is not necessarily unique to AI devices, right? Because today, I mean, even without using Siri and all the so-called AI in the back end of the devices, people are very attached to their phones, for example, right? And the way they interact with their phones is really, to some extent, to a very intimate level, right? So it's not necessarily just AI devices, and there are other anthropomorphic technologies as well. So you see many companies trying to put like a face behind the voice, okay, to be able to make people to feel like they're interacting with a real human, although on the back end, the algorithms are fully programmed, okay, to say whatever those technologies are saying, okay? So what I think could be what makes AI devices very unique and specific is the intelligence aspect of AI. Okay, so at the end of the day, whatever definition we proposed, all boiled down to the fact that the device has to mimic human intelligence, right? So we do not have such expectations from devices that are not tagged AI, right? If we go back to the example of the phone, if you're just using your phone, right? and you want to type what does business intelligence mean, for example, right? It's going to produce a web page with lots of options. You're not expecting the answers to be smart. You just expect a list of web pages, right? But the moment you're interacting with Siri, for example, and you ask what is business intelligence, to some extent, you're expecting a smart answer, right? Because Siri has been tagged an AI, right? And so each time we're going to purchase or use a device that is called or tagged an AI, we expect some degree of intelligence to be manifested by these devices. Which brings me to the question of what then is intelligence? In your opinion, what is intelligence?
The ability to articulate an answer.
The ability to articulate an answer. Thank you. Very nice answer. Anyone else? Think of an intelligent person. Why would you say someone is intelligent? Why do you think person A, person B is intelligent?
They're able to come up with independent thought based on an incomplete data set.
So the person is able to come up with an independent thought based on a given data set. Okay, thank you. I like that, especially the point of independent thought. Okay, and even the data set you spoke about, where does the data come from?
Through just observations. You could think of it
through
as
observations. Like, so can you say that again, please? Can you please say that again? Okay. Yeah, so maybe based on observations, right? That's where you might obtain your data.
Sorry, eyes, ears. Yeah, sorry. It comes from sensors, basically. For humans, it's our 5 senses.
Okay.
And for artificial intelligence, it'd just be the input, whatever.
Yeah. So from multiple sources, right? From observation, from what you learn in class, and multiple sources can actually be the sources of data. Okay. All right. So just keep thinking about that, right? About what intelligence is, forgetting about machines, just even humans, what intelligence is all about. Now, what are some of the reasons why people will not adopt a device that's called AI? Generally, it boils down to 3 reasons: trust, security concerns, and privacy concerns, right? So generally, people are worried about the fact that they do not, they're not sure where their data is going, what's going to be done with this data, right? In Europe, I think we have the GDPR, which actually helps protect us significantly from a lot of privacy concerns. Okay, so have any of you been worried about the privacy of your data in any of your smart devices?
Hi, Ransome, can you hear me?
Pardon?
Can you hear me okay? Hello?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. I don't actually own an AI. I don't think I own anything like similar to artificial intelligence, like an Amazon Echo. And one of the main reasons was around the kind of security or privacy concerns, where you sort of hear stories. I didn't look into it too much, but you do hear stories of what you're asking about, you know, weather or music preferences, or asking to play music, or that they then use that for targeted ads, or, you know, special discounts, you know, these sort of things. And that was something that I didn't really have much interest in handing over to Amazon. And also, I don't really need a speaker that does that. I already have a speaker that doesn't have AI in it. It works perfectly fine.
Okay, thank you. And what about for those who do use, about your trust in companies like Amazon that actually have access to this data, right? If you choose to use it, how do you, to what extent do you trust them with this data? So, anyone? So in fact, generally, there is a lot of concerns and different levels of trusting when it comes to things like AI. And let's stick to the example of Amazon, okay? So first of all, you have Amazon that has its own platform on which you store the data, for example, okay? And then you have third parties, okay, who also provide services. So if you're using, for example, trying to purchase something through or from Walmart, right? You have to pass through, for example, their smart speaker. Amazon, the service provider, the device, the inventor, does have access to your data, and the third party company also has access to your data. And you're not always sure what they do with this data, okay? So there are different levels of trust that do affect people's intentions to actually use or to adopt AI devices. Funny story, I did speak to one of the big bosses, one of the VPs actually at SAP that does work on AI a lot. And he doesn't have or doesn't use AI devices per se in his home. And when I asked him why, he said he doesn't trust that his information and data is safe with them. And I asked him, but you guys actually make this AI, right? You guys will make AI devices. How come you, who makes the AI devices, doesn't actually trust it? And he said, well, it's like bankers who do not put their money in banks. They do not trust the banks because they know how it works. So that was his answer, you know. So I found it very funny because it's curious to know that they all advocate for the use of these devices, but a good number of them do not use these devices at home. I spoke to one of the directors at IBM as well, and he had the same reaction. He said to him, it's a kid's toy that's just used to get your data actually, you know, so you speaking to it, it does listen to you. So it's always listening, and they get as much data that they can use to provide personalized services. But beyond that, in terms of interaction, he doesn't perceive it as an AI, and so he doesn't use it, right? So this gives you an idea of the reasons why many people will not adopt whatever we call AI devices today. Okay. Now, what are some of the applications of AI you can think about? Lorianne already told us about applications for in health, for example, right? Any other applications?
Maybe Spotify and Netflix and those different entertainment applications.
Okay, Spotify and Netflix. Good example. How?
Just like suggesting different programs or songs to listen to based on what you've been listening to before.
Okay, thank you. Very nice answer. Anyone else?
The automotive industry.
I didn't hear that, sorry.
The automotive industry?
Yes. Yes, how?
Well, I suppose
how is it used in automotive?
Well, I suppose in general, there's so much software in cars, but I know that Bosch have recently come up, well, they won some award for this virtual visor that we might see being implemented in cars in the next few years.
Okay.
So it does have different algorithms and artificial intelligence applications and stuff, this visor.
Okay, thanks. So I do like your answers all the time, Lorraine, because they are typical of the reasons and motivations behind this research, you know, because there's a lot of confusion around the fact that we cannot lay a finger on what exactly is the AI and what exactly it does, because we're not sure how it distinguishes itself from existing technologies or algorithms that can already enable us do some of these things, right? Because in cars, I do agree, before when I started my contract, the idea was to work on autonomous cars, right? So in many of these autonomous cars, I think when you work with them, you would see there is a lot of what I would call automatic cars, not really autonomous cars. See, and it makes it brings a difference, right? If it's automatic, it means that it doesn't necessarily learn how to behave or how to adapt to given situations, right? But if it's autonomous, then it has to have this kind of capability where it does have a significant abilities to adapt, right, to given situations. So as we go on, we'll definitely talk more about this and what I think could be possible perspectives towards this. So yes, there are many applications of AI. It's applied in almost every domain today. At least almost every domain claims to provide some kind of AI service, okay? And in my specific research, I focused on e-commerce, right? That was the focus. And we'll use that as an example to illustrate what I'm trying to describe as AI and how we can bring value to firms, okay? So essentially, we all know what e-commerce is, right? So it's buying and selling online, summarily, right? I think all of us have performed e-commerce to some extent, right? Yeah, especially given this COVID period, we've all been forced to buy online, right? Due to the lockdowns and stuff. So we had to purchase online. So we're all familiar with the concept of e-commerce. And so generally it has 4 key components, right? It has actually the business value, right? Which is actually the impact that the e-commerce has on the performance of firms, right? We have technology for information exchange, okay? Whichever technology we use to exchange information, maybe it's your smartphone, your laptop, or whatever. You have the trading process, which is actually you, the buyer, and the seller. And you have decision support provided by the platform, okay? And generally, the e-commerce process is simple. It starts from you actually getting information on the products you want to buy, okay, in your pre-purchase phase. You actually do some research about it. You select the product you want. After that, you proceed to payment, then fulfillment, and customer service and support. Right? This is classic. You all know. How do you think AI could intervene in each of these steps? Or do you think, in your experience with e-commerce, is there any point in time that you think firms have used AI in any of these steps?
Even on the first one there, like, so for the information on a product, it could be in terms of like recommendations. I think someone mentioned it already, actually, based on previous purchases.
Very correct. Thank you. Anyone else? Any other step?
I'd say, following Peter's comment, the second step, there's a good chance that my search will look different to your search, even if we type the same words, because it's based on, you know, they'll crunch the numbers on our previous searches and what we're interested in and what assumptions they've made about us to probably show the most tailored products.
Yeah, very correct. Thank you. It's also based on recommendations, right? Like your classmate said. The third step, it will still be recommendations essentially, right? It would help you to select a product. At the level of payment, do you think AI helps somehow?
Well, I know for me that my sister is living in Denmark at the moment, and she fell recently and broke her ankle. So I sent her some flowers, and to do that, I just looked up flower shop in Denmark, etc., sent flowers and so on, and that worked perfectly. She got them the next day, etc., except that my credit card was had a stop put on it by the bank, because they saw this as being an unusual transaction. So we had to ring the bank to say, no, I did that. So it could have left me in a kind of a sticky situation, going into a shop and not being able to pay for something. But I guess that was a function of AI at work in the background.
Okay, thank you. I agree. I mean, that's one of the main uses of AI is to actually identify patterns, right? Pattern recognition. And then if it identifies an unusual pattern, it helps to prevent fraud by maybe freezing the card and then sending an alert. So yes. And next at the fulfillment stage, which is actually where you actually deliver the product. Okay, everything that happens from the time you pay to the time the product gets delivered. Can AI help?
I think Amazon use AI to like map out how their warehouse employees pick all the products from the shelves, and then how they'll load those onto like delivery trucks for the most efficient routes, things like that.
Yes. It's extensively used at the level of logistics and supply chains, right? To actually help to track products, to map deliveries. Exactly. And finally, support, customer service and support.
Chatbots.
Yeah, chatbots. So that's like one of the most popular implementations of AI, right, at the level of customer service and support, right? Okay, so we'll see that many companies and industries have adopted the use of technology as a very popular channel, specifically desktop, mobile, and tablets, right? You can see in different industries that people mostly use the mobile devices to be able to perform their e-commerce activities. Okay, and you would observe that naturally, since they use mobile devices, it's mostly things like shopping apps, social media, and voice assistants that are the most used of the channels that enable people to access these e-commerce platforms, right? And the aim and the reason why all these companies do adopt these e-commerce strategies and platforms is actually to enhance their e-commerce capabilities, right? Which is actually a firm's ability to interact, okay, and with its customers to be able to have a competitive advantage, okay? And how can AI, therefore, help these kind of firms to be able to develop a competitive advantage? How can AI help an e-commerce firm stand out? You all described how AI can be used by e-commerce firms at every stage, right? You did that from information right down to customer service and support. You all did that. Now, all firms can probably do that, but how can a firm gain competitive advantage? By leveraging
like
AI.
A better customer experience kind of from end to end.
Yes, very nice point. By using it to enhance end-to-end customer experience. Anyone else?
Improve efficiency of orders, kind of adopting something like Amazon uses.
Excuse me?
And stuff like that. Just improving efficiency.
Nice.
Improving efficiency for fulfillment.
All right. Very nice point. Thank you. One more. One more. You're in business intelligence and analytics programs. Almost every algorithm you learn, AI algorithm you learn, what is it designed for?
For predictive analytics to predict return, if the customer is going to leave or not.
Exactly. So to provide some kind of insights, right? To support decision making, to anticipate and all that, right? So essentially, those are the three key aspects, what you guys raised, and three key aspects that can be leveraged by e-commerce firms, right? When it comes to AI. So AI can help them to actually improve their processes, like I think Tom said, for optimization, right? To actually help improve efficiency. For business insights, right? Maybe using AI for predictive analytics and to support other decision making. And finally, to enhance customer end-to-end experience, right? And in the course of my research, I realized, which you would observe in general, is that many firms that have an e-commerce option, including the Netflix, like you said, the Amazon and all that, today, what they really use to be able to improve their value propositions for firms are recommender systems, right? Most of them, that's what they use. So somehow, if it's for the product, when you want to purchase a product, they always have some kind of recommendation for you. Oh, based on the last movie you watched, I think you should watch this one. Based on the last product you bought, I think you should buy this one, right? And your ads, when you're searching on the website, the ads that come, the ads really personalized based on your previous search, right? So there is always some kind of recommendation going on e-commerce platforms today, okay? So being able to meet the three categories of e-commerce capabilities that can be enhanced by AI usually would go through their recommender systems behind the e-commerce platforms. Okay, so how can this be done? First of all, starting with business insights and business process optimization. Okay, there are 4 key themes that can help firms in particular to be able to leverage AI in their back end. First of all, we have optimization, where they can actually use AI algorithms to be able to optimize each step in the order life cycle we just saw, from information right down to customer service and support. Okay, and they can make use of algorithms, AI algorithms that you're all familiar with, different machine learning, deep learning algorithms, artificial neural networks, genetic algorithms that can actually help to be able to optimize each of these steps. Now, for them to provide better quality recommendations, they can base themselves on personalization. So they actually need to be able to provide personalized recommendations. Personalized recommendations implies actually collecting as much information as they can about you, right? And to be able to propose recommendations that are most suited to you. Sometimes there is a trade-off. Most of the time there is a trade-off. For them to do that, they need to access your personal information, which brings us to what we spoke about related to security and data privacy, right? And so if you do not want them to have access to it, well, unfortunately, your services that you're going to propose are not going to be as personalized. Unfortunately, AI works this way such that if you do not open up to AI, AI wouldn't be able to give you as much as it can, right? It's like your friend. If you think someone is your friend, it's a mutual relationship, right? So you have to give, it's give and take. You open up to the person opens up to you. If you're closed, the person assumes you don't want to be a friend, doesn't know much about you, and so wouldn't open up to you either, right? Trust, of course, you have to be able to consider the trust aspect to try to build a trusting relationship between the people and the recommendations made by AI. People should be able to trust the recommendations that are made. So on Netflix yesterday, you watched an action movie, right? The recommendations have to be so good that with time, when Netflix will tell you, based on the fact that you've been watching these movies, I do recommend this movie for you. You watch the movie, you are satisfied, you would have more trust in the recommendations that they propose, right? So it's very important for firms to try to leverage, okay, their AI algorithms to be able to build this kind of trust between the consumers and the recommendations made by the AI. And finally, it's important to base recommendations also on consumer sentiments, okay? Which brings us to sentiment analytics, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's essentially trying to make recommendations based on the consumer's emotions. So being able to say, hey, it's like you're not in a very good mood today. So rather I recommend maybe a funny movie, a comedy, rather than an action movie that you usually watch, okay? And all of this again implies having access to your data to be able to monitor your sentiments at any given point in time, okay? And all of this, to be able to implement all of this, firms could actually leverage what I call automated analytics capabilities, okay? And these capabilities simply mean it's a firm's ability. So the firms need to develop the ability to actually use AI techniques to automate their analytics capabilities, right? So they should be able to use AI to automate their sentiment analytics, their trust building analytics capabilities, the optimization analytics capabilities, and as well, their, what was the other one again? Personalization, okay? So to do this, it requires 3 key resources that could be internal or external to the firm, okay? So their algorithms, So they get people and experts who can actually develop these algorithms for them. This is how they get the competitive advantage, okay? The algorithms should be unique, okay? So rather than using generalized algorithms, they should develop algorithms that match their own data, okay? And their sources of data also have to be unique. So Amazon has its own data sets. Apple has its own data sets. And you should make sure that your firm also has its own unique data sets. And the models, machine learning or deep learning models that are used for automation in the back end should be tailored to the data sets of your clients, okay? And no two data sets are ever going to be exactly the same. So you tailor them this way, and it's going to make you very competitive as long as the competition doesn't have access to your data and your specific algorithms, okay? Also, you have to leverage the expertise in customer analytics you have internally. So maybe your company has its own staff who has been doing the analytics without AI for a while, okay? But now with AI, in addition to automating, you could actually use your existing skills in the company to better interpret the data and to adjust the models based on their understanding of the real behavior of their customers. So in fact, automated analytics capabilities are not going to replace your existing analytics team. They're going to augment them. So it would help them to be able to improve the quality of the models and to better understand the customers such that the models will be able to provide better recommendations. Okay. Is it clear for everyone? So these are unique aspects that firms will develop to make them distinguish themselves from the competition and avoid replication in the long run. But again, they have to protect this information because if the competition has access, they might be able to replicate. So that said, this is how firms can leverage AI to improve business value from the back end, right? In terms of improving the efficiency of their processes and automating their business insights, right? And to help to improve the quality of recommendations. But they provide these recommendations through platforms, right? And the platforms, for example, if they had to use AI platforms like through Siri or through Alexa on our smart devices, okay, how can they leverage these platforms at the front end? So at the level, at the customer end-to-end experience, like you said, front end, okay? So the first point is that consumers need to adopt these AI devices, like adopt the Fitbit or adopt the smart speaker or the smartphone for this specific activity, right? And the question is, if you're adopting it because it's smart, do you actually perceive the intelligence in these devices? Because if you do not, then you might as well just use the recommendations provided through your laptop or your desktop, right? If you have to choose to adopt a device because it's smart, then it has to show some degree of smartness, right? So the question is, are your devices smart? What does it mean for your devices to be smart? Okay. So generally, for us to perceive a device as smart, it does have to demonstrate what we call smart, whatever that is. Okay, you as an individual, you have your expectations from someone who is smart. The institution has its expectations from smart students, right? And so according to you, what does it mean to be smart? I've been working on the field for a while, so I do know that to some extent, these devices are smart based on the technologies implemented in the back end, right? So we've put machine learning on the back end, we've put deep learning in the back end that makes all the recommendations it does make. But if you're never satisfied with the recommendations that it makes, is it really smart? right? So according to us who produce the device, we think it's smart. But according to you, the consumer, is it smart? See, so there is a difference between the objective part of it and the subjective part of the intelligence perceived by AI devices, right? And so I'm proposing that it is the perception, the actual actualization of the intelligence, what the device can do as an intelligent device, that is going to affect your decision to actually use this device for a given activity. As long as you do not perceive it as smart enough to help you do what you want to do, then it's not smart enough. And how can we perceive that? Now, based on theories of intelligence, there are actually 4 different aspects that characterize intelligence. Irrespective of the perspective of the definition, there are actually 4, okay? So it's perception, comprehension, action, and learning. These are the 4 elements that characterize intelligence. And so I think if we're able to perceive these 4 elements in any technology for a given activity, then that technology is an AI for that specific activity, okay? In general, there are 2 big general, very large categories of AI. We have the strong AI and the weak AI, right? So weak AI is usually used to characterize AI that is really good at something specific, right? And then strong AI is one that actually behaves or it's like a human, right? Has general intelligence capabilities. We're not there yet. So generally we have specific AI capabilities today. So we have weak AI today. So an AI that can do this or that. And so it justifies why we can say this is an AI if it's able to perform as an intelligent human on a specific task. And so I show you the attributes that actually help to identify at any given point in time if a device could be categorized as an AI or not, okay? And when I try to ask people around who have been using, for example, smart speakers for online shopping, I found out that indeed, this is when you actually ask them to be specific about what they think is the intelligence of the device, it actually falls in at least one of these categories, okay? So take your smart phone, for example. So is it how sensitive is it to your voice? Can you actually talk to Siri from anywhere? Would it be able to recognize your voice? Can it distinguish your voice from the voice of other people, right? This is what a regular intelligent human being can do, right? So if it's not able to tell when a Ransome or John is talking, then maybe it's not that smart, okay? And this has been the source of a lot of fraud, especially at the level of smart speakers, okay? And you also have the perceived understandability. Is it able to understand you at every given point in time, okay? And understanding is really very complex because you expect to speak naturally like you're speaking to your friend, and you expect the system to understand. If you actually have to learn the pattern, like you're learning the pattern of your website, you know that you have to click on this button to be able to access this information. You have to click on pay to be able to purchase and stuff like that. If you have to do that with an AI that you're probably talking to, then it actually defeats the whole purpose of AI, right? Then there's just another voice interface. So the whole strength that many companies try to sell is the ability to perceive, right? The fact that this AI can understand you. And in terms of the actions you can take, it should be able to have some degree of autonomy at the level of taking the actions that you expect it to take and to interact with you like a regular human. And finally, it should be able to learn. You have to be able to observe some extent, some degree of learning. which indeed explains your machine learning and deep learning algorithms that you learn all the time. Other algorithms have always existed, where you have training data sets and test data sets that you can simply write your full algorithm and implement, and it will be able to simulate some kind of learning. But the difference is when you're working with machine learning and deep learning, you do not program it fully. You have a training data set where you train it, but the algorithm will evolve itself as the data evolves, right? Which is essentially one of the characteristics that really make algorithms called AI to be different from other algorithms that perform similar tasks, but are not AI, okay? Which, for example, you would observe is the difference between many chatbots and many voice assistants. Most chatbots are actually fully designed on how to respond, and immediately you leave their sphere of understanding, they're no longer able to communicate and interact with you. Well, voice assistants claim that they learn, but maybe they do if you, the consumer, does not perceive that your AI device is learning. For example, Lauren, if you did not observe that your smartwatch is maybe adjusting its recommendations in terms of number of footsteps, in terms of when you should actually go for a run, maybe when you should cool down. If it's not able to learn your behavior and adjust over time, maybe, just maybe, I don't have the answer yet, we can start looking if it's really an AI or not, right? So I, based on these 4 characteristics, did find out that indeed it does affect consumers' intention to use AI devices for activities like online shopping. Okay, now, what's your experience with AI? Unfortunately, we do not have much more time. I would have made you do a little exercise where I would have asked you a few questions about your personality, right? Because given that understanding subjective intelligence is highly subjective, maybe, just maybe, your personality would actually affect the way you experience your interaction with voice assistants as an AI, for example, okay? If you're someone who is more closed, who is very shy, or someone who is very protective of his or her information, you will definitely not share much of your information with your AI device. As a result, you might not really appreciate the experience of the AI because you wouldn't perceive the intelligence. Whereas someone who is happy to share Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all your information online with your AI, it may be able to make connections that would help it understand you better and to provide better services for you. And that person would think that, actually, I have a great experience with AI, okay? So I think there is a very strong, or I thought, and I tested, that there is a strong interaction between people's personalities, their propensity for trust, their privacy concerns, and prior experience with AI devices. So if, for example, you were happy with your Fitbit, you might be able to project and think, if this AI behaves, if Siri behaves so well at measuring my health, it might be equally very great at helping me do my shopping online, okay? And if you had a bad experience with it when it was helping you measure your health, you might assume that it will be as bad at helping you shop online, okay? And so these were the first personality traits. Like I said, well, we would have done the test, but we do not have time so that you would see, based on my findings, which conditions or which personalities are most likely to have a high customer experience performance with AI devices during the shopping activity, okay? So you would observe that based on my findings, you would observe that people who have agreeable and consensus and intellect, so combinations of personalities, okay? So one person could have multiple personalities, and some personality traits, sorry. One person may have multiple personality traits, and these personality traits may be stronger in some people than in others, okay? And different combinations of them are going to lead to different outcomes in terms of experience, okay? And so my recommendation is that for the front end, first point is that firms need to stop hyping, first of all, the AI capabilities that they promote. So rather than saying that your device can do everything, just stick to exactly what it can do and put that at the forefront so that consumers would be able to perceive the affordances directly without having to imagine what they think intelligence is and expect more that cannot be delivered, because that would just make them not like your AI and not adopt it at all. If they get to adopt it, then maybe with, again, the automated analytics capabilities, they could automate understanding of the consumer's personalities and making combinations of these personalities in the back end that are going to help them identify how to actually improve the experience of different people based on their personality traits. So in my opinion and in my findings this far, these are the things that firms can actually do to be able to leverage AI, okay, which for me is a technology with 4 essential components: perception, comprehension, action, and learning. How firms can leverage this in the back end through automated analytics capabilities to improve the processes and insights, and in the front end, how they can make sure that they portray the right intelligence capabilities of the device and different combinations of personality traits, trust, privacy concerns, and prior experience that can give a great experience to the customers. That said, there is still a lot to explore on how this can be done, okay? In terms of the resources, the capabilities, and the outcomes that can actually help to redefine the value proposition of AI to consumers. I hope that you found it interesting, and some of you might be interested in looking into this topic further. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ransome.
Thank you very much, Ransome.